Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is, wherever you are right now. Thank you for tuning in to the Conversations with Dr. Don show. The show is produced and broadcast from Portland, Oregon, USA. And for your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people, like most of you out there, about who they are as one-of-a-kind, unique individuals, and about whatever it is we've decided to talk about this evening. On this show, we've got a dear old friend of mine, John Poling, who's been on the show 1,000 times through the years. We've been around together for a long time. How are you, John?
I'm doing great.
Good to have you back again.
You bet.
Yeah, and Alex
Evans.
Evans, and I met you through John.
Mm-hmm.
And you know John, so I'm not too sure you're dependable about anything. We've been doing this for years and years. But we've chatted for a few minutes before the camera started rolling, and you're going to be an interesting guest, I promise. And you'll be pleased with the end result. Yeah. All right, so the bio segment, we're going to take John first, because I think we'll be learning more about you since you're new compared to what John has been up to. John, you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. And,
for you, I'm always ready.
John, if I were to ask your best friend, who is John Poling, what would your best friend say? Be your best friend. John Poling is...
Pretend I'm my best friend, huh? John Poling is everything. He does everything like Alex said about himself. There's very little I haven't tried.
Really? No.
Yeah.
Maybe we should look for those things that you have. Never mind. John, you've been on before, but let's go ahead with a bio on you anyhow, because there'll be some viewers who haven't seen you before. When and where were you born?
New Mexico.
New Mexico?
Unbelievable. My father was a traveling evangelist, and he stopped over in New Mexico because my mother's pregnancy. Day before Christmas, I was born. And I always tell people, I'm a new Mexican, not just a Mexican. So they stopped over in Clovis just for 6 months so she could have me.
I'll be darned.
Then they traveled, and they had a little box they put between the two front seats, and I was in that box. And that's how I got here.
Why were you born?
Why?
Don't ask me the same question I asked you.
I wasn't believing my ears.
Yes, why were you born, John?
Well, I have gifts to give to the universe.
Ah, what is that?
A lot of gifts.
Okay.
The gift of gab, I've been told.
Yeah, we know that already. All right. Anything significant about your racial, national, or cultural heritage that the viewers would be interested in?
Well, I don't know about racial, but my family came out from Virginia and homesteaded in Texas, the panhandle of Texas. And my father's brother and he wanted to homestead together so they could travel together. So the two boys, you had to have a cabin. You had to live on it. And they built one cabin over the line, and then he wrote back to get my grandma. And when my grandma came out, she says, "There's no way I'm going to live in a cabin with you two guys." So he said, "I will get you your own place." Well, in the panhandle, they had this ranch, and it had a rock face. And he went in that rock face and made a cave. And Grandma told me, that is where she learned housekeeping, brooming that rock floor. Rattlesnakes actually over the door at times.
We don't need you anymore. It's full of these stories. I remember now, John. Yeah. And your father's religious bent, did that take on you and your brother?
In a way. My, like I say, the grandfather was when they came out homesteading, and Grandma had the religion.
Okay.
But then my dad went through a conversion, and the reason he got converted, is in his first family, I had two older brother and sister, and he lost his wife in childbirth, and that just shook him up. So he followed Grandma out to California and converted to the church. Yeah,
And it lasted, huh?
yeah, all those years.
Yeah. Do you have a religious preference today?
Well, we just call it Bible. I mean, what are you going to say? I believe in Jesus, I believe in the Bible, and the church I go to is a Bible church.
You're not a Muslim?
Not anymore.
All right, how about your formal education, John?
Well, how formal do you want to get? I had a girlfriend, and she was dancing with me, and she wore a formal.
Oh my God, I'm leaving. You want to come in and host this show?
Listen, I went to Benson High School.
Yeah.
I was the president of the Youth for Christ for 2 years in a row, the chaplain of the Youth for Christ, and the girl wore a formal and we had a dance.
Don't mention formal anymore during this show, will you? That's enough. And after high school, what did you do?
Well, we took every shop there was. And so I decided to specialize in cabinet making. But I had, at Benson in those days, first off, it was all boys. Secondly, they had automotive, plumbing, sheet metal, cabinetry, and even a foundry. A lot of people never even saw a foundry.
Foundry in high school?
Yeah.
Did we get to when you were born? You told me just the day before Christmas. What year was that, John? You don't want to tell your age, I know.
Well, no, 1940, they can figure that out.
Okay. Yeah, you were married in the past.
Yes. Way back.
Was it a male or a female you were married to?
Well, not today could be the one, but I married a young lady that was from the church.
Yeah.
And it lasted 9 years.
And you've been single ever since then?
Yeah. I didn't have guts after the divorce. Try it again.
Are you available today? You're going to remarry?
No. I get asked that a lot.
Don't be so emphatic about it. It's offensive, isn't it?
I mean, I'm
Alex, help me with this. I can't handle it.
76 years old, and I managed to last since 1970. And I've been doing just fine all these years.
Well, when some of my viewers see you, they're going to come after you. I can tell you right
I hope so.
So what are you doing now in your retirement?
Well, I'm not really able to retire. I've tried desperately.
Yeah.
But
You got so many things going on in your life by way of earning money.
well, I was thinking I would do carpentry, and so I started doing construction. The day I graduated from high school, I traded a lot. I had a car. A car. A lot of people don't know that Vespa made a car. And I read an ad, and I said, want to trade economy car for land. A guy called me up, and he had some land just right near where we lived. And he said, my wife could use an economy car, and I have a lot. And he told me it was out there on 133rd and Raymond, southeast.
Here in the Portland area?
Yeah. And so I said, well, why not? I'll try that out. I just got out of high school, so I built my first house on that lot.
Is it still standing?
Well, not only that, but it was on a rock. Literally a rock. And I didn't realize they have no sewer lines out there at that time. They do now, but and so how do you put a cesspool in a rock?
You figured a way.
I did.
Did your foundry training come in help?
So I checked around and found out you gotta get, I can't dig a cesspool, so I had to have a septic tank.
Oh, yes.
And I wanted to get deep enough to get the tank under the ground. So I put a dynamite. I thought, well, that'll work. I'll just blast a hole. So
Did you know this about it?
when I bought the dynamite, I said to the guy, what's the best way to get that to go down? And he said, you got to put something heavy on top. So I got a big rock, and I struck that dynamite, and it shot in the air, up in the air. And my neighbor, he was over the edge. He couldn't see too well what I was doing because I was on the edge of a bluff there. And so he comes running up the hill. Where's the bird? I said, what bird? He said, I heard the gun go off and I saw the bird fall. Don't tell me you didn't shoot a bird. That rock came right down in the middle of the rafters of the house I was building.
I think I'm going to get through with you because the way you're going, you're going to take up the whole hour.
Poor Alex.
You have business ventures ongoing now.
Well, yeah, then I started building that first house, and then I started trading, and I had bought a house, built a house, and I thought, well, I'll just run an ad, and I'll get some highway frontage, and I'll subdivide. And so I advertised highway frontage. Lady calls me up, and she says, I have a motel on the coast. Would that interest you? And I said, well, yeah, I'll take a look at it. And I said to him, Dad, why don't you ride with me over there? And he said, John, he said, you've already passed me in horse trading, this real estate. So anyway, it was 5 units, and it was called Cozy Cottages. I'd look up the road that way, I'd see the Dorchester, and look down this way, and they had that, later became a thing over there. Jerry Parks got to be the mayor over there, Lincoln City, and he built a big development, and it later failed.
Lincoln City in Oregon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I traded for that 5 units, and then I ran an ad, and I said, I want to trade a motel at the coast. I went on my honeymoon down there, and we completely redid that. And I traded it for 5 houses in Portland and all my cash back, that original sale.
Is that on your resume that you are a horse trader?
I wasn't.
Okay. And you have children?
All over the country.
That's enough of that. We're going to leave that. Do you have, what's your political persuasion, or a Trump supporter? Or
Well,
what?
I started out as a young Republican.
Uh-huh.
And then as I got smarter, I should say older maybe. Anyway, I started dating more left-leaning.
Uh-huh.
And so by the time Trump came along, I was alarmed. And I still don't know. The guy's crazy.
Really?
But
That's putting it mildly, isn't it?
but I have a lot of ladies in my life, and they're all crazy. So
Don't look at me that way. Okay. Memberships in political, social, or civic organizations that you care to name for the viewers. You have memberships in what?
well, I was in financial planning. And
Yes.
we had to do that,
Mm-hmm.
and in construction, and I was licensed and everything for that. Everything you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Last time you named my show the Abdominal. I mean, I've tried everything.
Indomitable, not
In-
abdominal.
Indomitable.
Forget about it.
I bring him along to keep me straight.
Okay, we're going to leave you in a couple of minutes to have some time for Alex over here. So persons from the past or alive today that you particularly admire or admired, and names come to mind other than me.
We've had a lot of fun together over the
We
years.
have,
I think probably Billy Graham and people like that was my favorite.
uh-huh.
And unfortunately, those are the guys that backed Nixon, and the Nixon's the one that had Watergate, so I didn't need to tell you the rest of that story.
Enough of that one too, because you go on, but that was forever.
Well, Billy Graham pitched a tent across the street from Benson High School.
Uh-huh.
And I went to that meeting. It was huge.
Yeah. All right. Any other names come to mind of people you look up to or admire other than Billy Graham?
Well, I don't know. Nowadays, I don't trust anybody.
Well, they could be from the past.
It would be way back. Way back.
All right. So let's stop bugging you and go over here to Alex. You ready for me, Alex?
Sure.
All right. We're not going to ask you the same trick questions as I asked him, so I got you off guard. And if I would ask your best friend, who is Alex, what would your best friend say? See, I lied to you. Alex is what or who?
I don't know, a father,
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur, rebel.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Not afraid to speak my mind or speak his mind. I guess.
I'm going to enjoy talking to you.
Okay.
I'm a rebel too.
All right.
And when and where were you born?
Well, I was born in Texas, and actually, my great-grandmother Julia was in a covered wagon. That my mother is named after my great-great-grandmother. But she was named after her great-grandmother Julia.
Mm-hmm.
So my mom is named after who came over in a covered wagon and settled in Texas. I don't know past that. We guess that probably from Wales, but I asked my grandfather, and he didn't know either where we were from before that, really.
Anything interesting about your racial heritage, or are you just plain American white bread?
Just white bread. As far as I know, I don't. There's, I don't think there's anything other. Like I say, Welsh is our guess as to where we came from.
Yeah.
So,
do you have a religious preference today?
As far as like a real specific one, no. I pretty much Bible is, but I'm a universalist, so I think everybody's going to get to heaven eventually. There might go through a hell or something in between or whatever, but so I'm not really dogmatic about believing whatever works for you.
You've been interested in
Right.
Buddhism? Something about
I know some Buddhism. I've read. I've been to India and I've been to Israel. So I've seen where Jesus taught the Sermon on the Mount, and I've seen where supposedly Buddha was so long ago they don't really know where stuff happened. But yeah.
Yes, you're a curious character. Your formal education. How much of that did you get?
I did I homeschooled for high school and then got a GED and then went to North Idaho College in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho I got plenty of credit there to graduate, but didn't actually fulfill the classes you needed to do, I took lots of credits and then went to University of Oregon, followed a girl to Oregon and went to University of Oregon for one semester. And then I went to Clackamas Community College for a little while, kind of in computer stuff. But I've never gotten any degrees. So, lots of different, learning stuff. But I really like college. I like taking classes. But as far as sticking to a plan, I haven't really been much for that.
So any idea what your IQ is?
On those internet tests, they usually guess me about 130 or something, but I don't know if those are, I've never had a formal IQ test or anything.
Yeah, you don't need them if somebody's smart enough to figure out how smart you are, really, and you're quite smart. You're above the mean.
Well, yeah, I'm sure I'm above average, but I don't know where it is.
Good. You got, I think you said you got a partner out there in the waiting
my
room.
wife's out there in the waiting room. Yeah, we actually met and were best friends as teenagers in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. We went to a Montessori school together before I went off to homeschool, and then she went off to actual public high school. but then we stayed friends as adults. So we've only been married, what now, almost getting close to 12 years, 12 years in January. But we're kind of old, you know, we waited far too long to get married. But we just stayed friends, you know, and I actually was engaged to the girl I followed to Oregon from Idaho. I was engaged to her for a little while, and that didn't work out. And so.
You still love your wife?
Yeah. Silly question.
Does she love you?
I think so. I'm pretty sure.
How about kitties? You got a couple
Yeah, I
kids?
got 2 of them. I got a 10-year-old boy and a 8-year-old girl, and we're homeschooling them, and they are just, you know, it's kind of exciting. I mean, it's I did a lot of kids stuff before, you know, and I thought I kind of got how to do kids. It's much harder when they're your own over, you know, other people's kids.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I took care of kids. I did YMCA day camp when I was in college, and, you know, during the summer. So I mean, I was taking responsibility for kids. But man, kids are owning them, or, you know, whatever. Having your own is much more challenging.
Why
than you think.
homeschooling? Why homeschooling for you and for your kids?
Well, like I said, I'm a rebel, so, you know, the the public school systems and I was homeschooled too, and just the public school systems, there's so much of a regimented training. You're supposed to be here at this point. I mean, our son, we barely put any effort into teaching him how to read, and he pretty much learned to read within a few months. You know, just you don't need, you know, 500 years of school to learn that. It just comes naturally. So
genetics, rather than just
I don't know if it's genetic. I don't think my son's especially intelligent or anything. He just, when he was ready to read, he did it, you know, and that wasn't at 6 or whenever they're supposed to start reading in school. He was like 8.5 and decided, I want to read now. And so, yeah, I mean, when you see things like that, you go, why are we putting our kids, well, see, and I really liked his story about how there were so much training in high school that, you know, you could work in a foundry or do cabinetry or that makes so much sense. That why aren't we teaching trades with all that time we keep the kids? We're teaching them, what are they learning?
How about civics? Wouldn't it be nice
sure,
if we taught our children civics for a while?
and
a couple of 3 generations?
Right. Other things besides, I mean, academic stuff is great. I'm all for it, but they've got them for so many hours. Why aren't they learning more stuff?
That's important for living.
Yeah. Right.
So, your political persuasion, or your left, right, or center, or what?
Well, I guess a right-leaning anarchist is. I'm really full-on anarchist.
You are rather. A glint in his eye when he said
Don't think the government very rarely helps. It seems like. So.
Memberships in political, social, or civic organizations. You belong to anything like that you want to share with the viewers?
Well, our have a church we were going to that just not any bad, you know, it wasn't like but our minister he needed a break. He's like gonna take some time off and may not come back, and so it was basically a house church that was too big to meet in a house, so we rented out a basement in another church, you know, so we were basically just a little bigger than a house church, and so he was just feeling a little too much. He'd been doing it for 12 years or so, and just was ready to take a break. So we're now floating.
Neither one of you guys belong to the ACLU. What's the matter with you? American Civil Liberties Union.
I get their flyers in my box every morning.
All right, so let's take a little early break here for a few minutes, and then we'll come back and talk about the subject of the show, the alternative, the bartering alternative. That sounds like an interesting title. We're going to talk about that, aren't we? Shall we take a break? Oh, we're back. Thanks for staying tuned. I'm glad you didn't run away on me. For your viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of 1-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like my guests here tonight and like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is we have decided to talk about tonight. And I got through that canned interview after all these years without cracking up. So the bartering alternative. Let's talk about that first of all, between the two of you. What's bartering about? An alternative to what?
An alternative to cash. That's exactly what it's about. And we created, way back in 1993, we started envisioning having our own money.
We being who?
Well, there were a whole group of us. And there was a group down in Eugene, another big group around the Portland area. And so we were thinking all the way from Canada to California is the Cascadia region. And at that time we were studying bioregions. So the name came from Cascadia, Our Exchange, CHE, that's the initials.
Isn't there, historically, hasn't there been bartering systems in other societies and cultures?
Yeah, in fact, that's where it got started, right? That's what they would, from shells forward, you know.
Yeah.
And but we printed our own currency. That's what made us different.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, he was part of it.
Yeah, and I used to spend my currency before I could. Never mind.
Right.
We've been together for so doggone long. And is that still ongoing? And the name of it was Chi? That was
initials, Cascadia, Our Exchange.
Uh-huh.
And it was, we created our own currency. We literally printed money. And a lot of people didn't think you had the right to print money, so I checked it out, and you can print money. You just can't say it's United States currency. And so we've been using that since '94.
How about counterfeiters? Do you have anybody try to counterfeit your money?
Well, the way we overcome that, really simple. When I'm looking at you eyeball to eyeball, it's hard for you to say, oh yeah, well here I got an extra 100 or 1,000 or something. No, I know you got it at the last meeting because I was there when you got it. It makes it real hard.
How often did you guys meet to barter using?
Right now, and it depends because there's barter groups all over the Cascadia bioregion. And so our particular one, which is Vancouver and Portland, we meet every month. And after all my horse trading and real estate, I ended up doing mobile homes because I couldn't any longer do construction. That's what I was in.
Is that why you're in the wheelchair?
Well, that's how it happened. And so I had, it wasn't because of on the ladder or anything. I had, my doctor told me, he said, John, he said, you're going to get high blood pressure and it's dangerous. And I said, I feel great. He said, don't go by that. Well, it blew out right here in my brain. And I was in Beaverton building another community.
In Oregon, Beaverton, Oregon?
Yeah, right here. And so I remember just going black, and my roommates picked me up and threw me in the van. We were in Beaverton, just a few miles from St. Vincent's, and they took me in there, and I was out in a coma for several days. And I asked the doctor what happened. He said, well, here, look at the scan we made.
Yeah.
And you could see right here where my brain had just blown out. Well, I was always dominant right, and I used to think I'd like to be left a little bit. I sure got left in a hurry because your brain works on the opposite side.
Yeah.
And so when you lose this side, the other side takes over. So I got to be the nice guy for a while.
How long ago was that?
1961, May 1961.
That's a long time. Yeah, you're still cooking, baby.
Well, and then slowly but surely, it got bad, and I ended up with this wheelchair about 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking with a cane before that.
Yeah, so let's go back to talking about chi.
Back to G. So anyway, we had the barter club, and we had our own currency, and we meet, and you bring something that you're not using, and I'm interested in that, so I buy it. You can do services, or you can do physical objects, like sort of in some senses, like if you had ever go to these sales they have, garage sales or something, bring all that stuff and trade it in, and we buy it with our currency, and then the next time somebody will want what you had, and we make that exchange.
How did you get along in the world where, in our country, where we have American money and dollars?
Let me tell you something. There was a college that was very interested in how this might work, and so they tracked it. And they had published a book, and they had a list of all of the exchanges, and they're all over the United States. And so we had one in upstate New York that we were following, and theirs was the hour. So you work an hour, you get paid for an hour, and that's how the hour came into it. And all kinds of communities were doing it, and you could go to another town and they would have a currency named after themselves.
So what motivated you to want to do something other than the dollar?
Well, number one, the tax structure, that was a biggie. And these are not taxed because they are not exchanged for cash, never. So I think that was a big issue, was how do you make exchanges? And if I trade you my cup and then I want your cup, we never made a profit, and so they're not worth it.
How are you going to support the government if we can't tax you?
That's the whole idea. I don't know, I've been asking Trump to let me in on that.
Don't swear on my program. So any more thoughts you have about this system you're talking about, and will it continue?
Well, we've been going 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
1940 was our first one, so we're over 20 years now.
23, yeah.
Yeah. And besides that, we have a lot of fun. We always have a potluck.
Yeah.
And then I find out what you do, and you find out what I do, and what I have.
Exchange.
And you make an exchange. And have a party and go on with some new merchandise, or maybe somebody wants to mow your lawn or clean out your gutters or whatever. You can pay them in this currency.
Yeah.
Well, and I bring my kids, and they get to do trading and kind of get money too for doing stuff, and it's a little easier to do it, a little less risky, whatever, to without having to deal with dollars and all that. They can get that practice of trading and negotiating, and with people they see pretty regularly, so they feel a little more comfortable.
Excellent training for kids, and his kids just love to come and see what we have. And when my little granddaughter, she was only 2 at this time. She's 4 now. And I would give her some and say, go around and find something you want and buy it. Well, you're using paper currency. It's pretty easy to do. And so I told her, I said, that guy, he just bought something. So you take this to him. He bought it from me. So you take this to him. Then you bring back the correct currency. And I tell her how much. Like he says, it's a great training for kids.
I'm going to check whether you're prepared for this interview. Let me see a couple of chi there.
You're-
Any currency with you? Has he got one? You bet.
I should have brought you one.
So you want to finish any more comments about that so we can allow enough room for what Alex is going to talk about, because
Well-
he's got so much to talk about.
It changed from this type of alternative currency to what he has. And now I like to hear what he has to say, because they have a whole new idea now. A new currency.
It sounds complicated to me, so shall we switch over
Yeah.
now to Alex? I'm tempted to ask you a question that a serial entrepreneur, what in thunderation is a serial entrepreneur?
Well, I grew up, my family, grandparents on both sides came from owning grocery stores. So,
Mhm.
you know, it's kind of just in my blood to, you know, be in some sort of business. Grew up, you know, when I was homeschooled as a high schooler, my parents owned a furniture business, and so I was there working, you know, when other kids were at school. So I was learning how to build furniture and how to run a business, and, you know, along with studying and, you know. So it's just sort of, so then, you know, later on, my mom sold me her, she wanted to move back to California. We lived in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. She sold me her cleaning business, so I was cleaning churches, and I got when I was going to college, I got some of the teachers wanted me to clean their houses, and just always something, you know. I've done some property trading here and there.
I forgot to Google entrepreneur. I'm not quite sure I've got what that really means. Somebody who's creative in their ventures.
Right, yeah, just doing business. And, you know, been for the last few years. So I had a regular job when I got married, you know, working in a warehouse, and it was actually a very small business, so it was more than just you know, I was answering phones, and you kind of did whatever needed to be done there, because there was only 2 or 3 employees. And
Especially if you're kind of bright, it's kind of easy to bounce here back and forth to decide what you want to do.
But then I'd come home and we would sell on eBay and Amazon. My wife and I were working on that, and eventually we got that going good enough. Actually, when the crash happened in 2008, I got laid off for a couple of months, and so during that time I put a whole lot of effort into, you know, the business and kind of got it built up. And then I got hired back on at the same job, but we had kind of gotten some momentum going, and so I only worked in about another year at the job, and then I quit and been supporting. Then for 2 or 3 years, supported us just selling on Amazon, mostly selling toys on Amazon, and then my wife got a little job, and she's anyway. So she's actually supporting us mostly now. I'm still doing the Amazon thing, but then I've been really into the Bitcoin and been putting a lot of time and energy, and that's not, you know, income. That's more savings and stuff for, you know, building our future there. So,
what is Bitcoin?
Well, it's the simplest answer, I think, is that it's a public ledger. Like if I had a sheet up here that had, okay, you know, I gave Don, you know, $10, and Don gave John $10, and you know that you've got a ledger right there that's public that everybody can see. Now, of course, Bitcoin, there's no names on it, it's just numbers. It's kind of like a Swiss bank account, a numbered Swiss bank account like you hear about in the movies, you know, where nobody's name is on it. It's basically just the numbers. I own this number, so I can trade with you. I have access to that, whatever money's in that ledger transaction, and then I can transact with it because I have the keys to the password.
And then you're avoiding paying taxes.
You can do that, yeah. I mean,
you have an option?
Well, it's a taxable. It's actually treated like commodity. So you pay capital gains when you sell Bitcoin. So you know you can avoid taxes with it, or you can't. It's you can avoid taxes with cash or with anything else too. So
Cryptocurrency. I'm not sure I got what Bitcoin is, but that's enough.
That's the crypto part is just the encryption of while the ledger is all there and we can see all the transactions. The encryption comes in. That's how it's secured. That I can't spend what's on your part of the ledger, and I can't spend what's on his part of the ledger, but I can spend what's on my part of the ledger because I have the password, the secret key to that.
So it's not like when I want something you've got, I give you $20 or $500. We have something in
There's basically no physical representation.
No.
Right.
Oh.
There's nothing physical.
Oh God.
I mean,
darn computers.
I mean, there are some people who've like made coins, and put a secret key on it and stuff. And I mean, that does exist just because people did it for fun, but it's not. There's really no need for any physical trade.
Okay, shall we go to some specific questions that I asked you for? Okay. Why do we need Bitcoin cryptocurrency, and why do we need that as compared to using regular money?
Well, one of the first big jumps in value for Bitcoin, not just in value monetarily, but in value as it was a few years back. You've heard of WikiLeaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
WikiLeaks was taking donations to be able to run. And through PayPal, Visa, and our U.S. government said, hey, we'd rather you guys not do that for them. And so they didn't make a law or anything, but so PayPal and Visa said, okay, well, we're not going to process payments to WikiLeaks anymore. So there was basically, became very hard to give a donation to WikiLeaks. So WikiLeaks started taking Bitcoin because you can't stop, just like cash. If I hand you cash, nobody can, unless they come and physically restrain us, they can't stop us from transacting in cash or chi. There's no bank in the middle, there's no Visa or MasterCard or PayPal, there's no third party, government, whatever, that can stop us from doing that transaction.
Is Bitcoin worldwide?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Wow, man.
In fact, Japan has currently got the highest usage. China's number 3. We're number 2 in the U.S.
So how is that affecting the normal money economy, the existence of Bitcoin?
It's not really affecting it much yet. Bitcoin's only worth about $60 billion, which is, what, 1/8 of what Apple is worth. Yeah, it's still really small. So there's worries. Recently, China did a lot of restriction on it because they're worried about their money leaving the country, and Bitcoin's a great way to do that. Is buy some Bitcoin and then you can.
How do you identify individual wealth? In terms of Bitcoin or cash or
you mean how's it denominated? Is that what you're asking?
Like Trump is worth $700 million or something,
right?
And how is, in terms of Bitcoin, how do we know how much you're worth? What's your wealth?
Well, a Bitcoin is worth about $4,000 right now. So if you had one, you'd be worth $4,000.
So how do I know how many Bitcoin you have? I don't know.
You don't know unless I tell you, or my address. You could. Well, I have more than one address that I keep Bitcoin at. But you could look.
More than one address keep Bitcoin. You're still hiding from the government.
But if you could look at my addresses and you could add them up or whatever if you knew what they were. If I don't know what they were,
right? Oh boy,
it's actually not
really.
Bitcoin actually isn't all that well hidden because your IP address is exposed. If people want to know, they could figure it out.
IP, internet provider.
Right. Well, your
ISP.
Your IP, your internet. Your address online when you're using it. When you use your phone, you have an address that the computers are talking to, and they can see that when you're doing your Bitcoin transfer, so they can figure out who you are and what addresses you're using. And so it's not a really, like I say, it's a numbered Swiss bank account. But guess what? Guys could sit out and watch who's going in and out of the Swiss bank. You know what I mean? It's not completely anonymous.
So there's no way in my being an anarchist or a streaming leftist that I'm going to be able to identify how much actual wealth each super wealthy individual has on the planet so that we can have some genuine socialistic sort of governing.
Right.
Triple entry accounting. We're going to have about 6 or 7 minutes left. So shall we jump to something here?
Let me do that, because I think it's one of the coolest things about it. So the economy of the world expanded a huge amount thousands of years ago when they figured out they could write down, oh, I owe so-and-so a goat, or, so-and-so owes me a piece of gold, that the economy of even the poorest people, it grew. Everybody was able to do trading more when we could keep records of it.
Sure.
So then about 600 years, we got double entry accounting, which allowed a huge expansion into like third parties, like lending, and many more things we're able to do, and we had a huge expansion in the economy. Bitcoin is what you'd call triple entry accounting. And what that does is it eliminates the need for the third party, that now we don't need a bank, we just need us. And we have a trusted or trustless, because we don't have to trust anybody in our transaction. We don't have to trust a bank or a Visa or a government or for it to work.
So you're heavily involved in Bitcoin. How are you going to file for bankruptcy?
That's a good
You
part.
capitalists, I'm not sure. Yeah. So
I'm just hoping to help other people claim bankruptcy. Some of those bankers, Jamie Dimon and so forth.
Another swear word. So you have some more volunteering. Well, am I asking questions about what would be good for my viewers to learn about Bitcoin and crypto?
Well, I think a lot of people think they have to know everything about it. Like, back in the 90s, people wanted to use the internet or whatever, and they thought they had to understand do you understand what an IP address is, or how it works, or how the computers talk to
Just
each other?
illustrated my ignorance by asking you what is that.
But I think a lot of people think, oh, I don't understand Bitcoin, so I can't use it. And it's usable, just like the internet is. You don't understand how the internet, most people don't understand how the internet works.
I sure don't.
And you can still use it. You may not even understand how a phone works. You still use it, right? I mean, even an old-fashioned phone. So I think that's what a lot of people think, they have to totally understand it, and I don't totally understand it, and I use it. So.
But you're pretty well involved
Right,
with
right.
Bitcoin.
I understand more than most people, sure, but still, it's a exciting.
Secret Swiss bank accounts. John, help me. I can't even think of it.
Well, what's interesting is they said that the Bitcoin was worth a certain amount, but it became worth more, and they all started getting rich in Bitcoin.
Right.
And I don't know if he wants to disclose, but he's made a lot of money trading to guys who bought in cheap, and it went up and up and up in value.
Well, it's
Ponzi scheme.
well, it's the velocity of money is if money, the more money is used, the more valuable it becomes. So the more people are interested in Bitcoin, the more people are using Bitcoin, and especially places like Venezuela. There's people there that are mining Bitcoin and paying to have Amazon ship stuff into Brazil, and then they're bringing food across the border. So they're getting Bitcoin, turning electricity into Bitcoin, and then using that to buy on Amazon to bring food, so they have something to eat in Venezuela.
It's actually doing what you just said.
Right. Yes.
Where have I been?
I don't know. This thing could get really big.
But and like I say, WikiLeaks accepting. I mean, that happened quite a few years ago. But it's that realizing that we can get past these challenges that governments and corporations and stuff put in front of us that restrict us and in our freedom to transact.
There needs to be some sort of control or management or oversight of what's going on, what humans are up to. We're beyond just killing each other No, I won't go there anymore.
Well, I personally think people are intrinsically good. I think God made good. I don't think God can make bad. I think we tend to cut ourselves off from the light some, and then we do some bad things occasionally. But I think humans are good. I trust humanity. I may not trust a specific person, but
have you been watching the series on Vietnam?
no.
Humans are good.
Right, but while
Yeah.
Vietnam was happening, how many good things were? I mean, we watched the news for an hour, but if you had the news show all the bad things that happened compared to all the good things that happened in the world, you'd get 10 seconds of bad stuff, and they wouldn't be able to fit it in a day. All the
My
good
problem
stuff
is,
that's happening in
I
the
cut you off. I don't like to do that.
No.
My problem is I want to have both things available on some sort of a moderate control or responsibility, not just all bad things or all good things. That's crazy. It doesn't
Well,
make sense.
But I think that people are just generally good and want to do good, and sometimes they're afraid. So they
Shall
do
I ask you
bad.
about Vietnam again? No, this one is bad. Okay, now we're running low on our time, so you have something more that you want to mention.
let's
Now
see,
we've got
what
a
do
couple
I
of minutes
really-
left.
Well, I'm assuming people might be interested in where to get Bitcoin. A place called Coinbase.com is a good place to start. You can-
Coinbase.
Coinbase.com, Coinbase.com,
Coinbase.com.
and there you can hook your bank account to their bank. It's a Bitcoin bank basically, and you can buy and sell your Bitcoin through them. They're insured and everything, and they're based in the Bay Area, so U.S. based, so you can kind of.
Who insures them?
I don't know the name of the insurance company, but
Must be
I
London,
don't
London.
keep my Bitcoin on their stuff because it's kind of like gold. Hold your own gold. Don't leave it somewhere else. So I hold my own Bitcoin. So I think that's a good place to start. If you, like I say, you don't have to know everything about Bitcoin. I think everybody should have a little. Just like I think everybody should have a little silver and gold too, in case the stuff hits the fan.
And you can buy a new home with Bitcoin?
Yeah, actually, in Dubai they're selling, and where was it? Turkey just announced there's a place selling apartments in Turkey for Bitcoin. So,
man.
and there was actually a few years ago somebody sold a Stradivarius for Bitcoin.
Oh man, my head's going woo, woo, woo.
So yeah, I mean it doesn't happen a lot yet. And then there's places online you can spend it. Microsoft accepts it on their online stores. Overstock.com, Newegg, which is a place you buy computer parts. So yeah, there's quite a lot of places online you can use it. So.
You got another hour? I got more questions for you.
Okay.
Right.
This has been very interesting. Without Googling, I've learned a lot just talking to you about Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah. And you, I always learn no matter what.
You know too much about me, Don.
I know how to put in a new sewer in a
Right.
rock.
You learned something tonight.
Anyhow, let's see. Let's allow a minute or so for each one of you to say whatever you want to the viewers, whether it's what we talked about this evening or anything else on your mind. Just here's your chance to look at the camera. Who's going to go first?
Well, I have my email address on your show. And all I tell people is just call me, and I'll bring you over, tell you when the next meeting is. We meet every month, and you need to find out where we are and get a hold of us and communicate with us.
And I think he's a little calmer than he has been on this show. How about you, Alex? Look at that camera and talk to the viewers.
I guess I just, I hope people look more into alternatives to our, I think the trading, in Bitcoin or Chi or, you know, interpersonal. I mean, a lot of the Bitcoin thing for me, you think, oh, it's online money and, you know, it's all people hiding in their homes. But it's a very social. We have if you look on meetups.com, you can find our meeting. We have 20 or 30 people every week meeting on Tuesdays to talk and learn more about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies.
So they can get a hold of you through your email.
Yes, and like I say, Meetup. If you look on meetup.com, just Bitcoin, you know, search for Bitcoin on meetup.com. You can. Tomorrow night we'll be meeting at IBU. It's a brewer.
It's in
beer
Beaverton?
place, yeah, here in Beaverton.
Yeah, I think I've seen it there.
Yeah.
So it looks like we're going to have to shut down because they're going to yell at me if we don't. So I'm going to tell you about the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union. That's not a communist organization. Without the ACLU, our civil liberties would be down the tubes for sure. And also, we got to end corporate personhood. We got to say that and show that corporations are not persons and money is not speech. Oh, I got to tell you about. Thank you for watching. Remember KFC, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you too, and you too, and you too. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.